The sunlight glinted off the crystalline facade of Prestige Auto Gallery as I approached the entrance. My weathered sneakers barely made a sound on the polished marble floor. I tucked a strand of auburn hair behind my ear, adjusting my simple cream Henley shirt. My well-worn jeans had seen better days, but they were comfortable, and in my world, the real-world practicality trumped pretension every time. I'm Emily Parker, though friends call me Em. At 33, I've dedicated my life to the Parker Institute for Children with Special Needs, an organization I built from nothing but determination and my background in developmental psychology. Few people knew that my foundation had transformed thousands of young lives across Chicago, and fewer still knew that I could easily afford any vehicle in the showroom. Not that it mattered, I'd long ago decided that ostentation wasn't my style. My eyes immediately locked onto a stunning emerald green convertible, gleaming under strategic lighting. Perfect for my sister Rebecca's 40th birthday. After conquering lymphoma last year, she deserved something extraordinary, something that had occupied her dreams since we were teenagers sharing a cramped bedroom in our modest childhood home. "Good morning," I smiled at a young man who approached. His suit seemed slightly too large for his slender frame, and his genuine smile was refreshing in this temple of opulence. "Welcome to Prestige Auto Gallery." The man whose name badge read Ryan Matthews, sales director, gave a tight smile. His eyes performed another quick scan of my attire, lingering on my scuffed sneakers. "That's the Velocity Spectre limited edition. Only 12 manufactured globally this year." He spoke as if explaining simple arithmetic to a confused child. "Perhaps I could direct you to our pre-owned section? They're located in a separate facility about 2 blocks south." Deep breath, Emily. You faced worse than this privileged gatekeeper. I was accustomed to such assessments. People rarely suspected that beneath my unassuming exterior lay a woman who deliberately chose simplicity despite having access to substantial wealth. There was freedom in being underestimated, though occasionally, like now, it stung. "I'd really appreciate seeing the interior," I persisted, maintaining my composure. "The color is exactly what I've been searching for." Ryan's expression soured noticeably. Behind him, 2 younger salespeople exchanged knowing glances, one covering a smirk with his hand. "The Spectre is shown by appointment only," he lied smoothly. "Our serious clients typically schedule private viewings." As if on cue, a couple entered wearing designer clothes that practically shouted their price tags. The transformation in Ryan's demeanor was immediate and telling. "Please excuse me," he said without actually looking at me. "Kevin can provide you with a brochure." He practically glided toward the newcomers, arms extended in welcome. "Mr. and Mrs. Donovan. Wonderful to see you again." I watched as Kevin approached with an apologetic smile. He couldn't be more than 24, and his genuine embarrassment at his boss's behavior was evident. "I'm really sorry about that," he said quietly. "Would you like me to tell you about the Spectre's features?" "I would, thank you," I replied. As Kevin enthusiastically detailed the vehicle's specifications, I noticed Ryan leading the well-dressed couple directly to the Spectre, the same car he'd claimed was appointment only. He opened the door with flourish, inviting Mrs. Donovan to sit inside. "Of course, it's not about the car being off limits. It's about me being deemed unworthy." "That's quite all right," I assured Kevin, who was now visibly uncomfortable with his manager's transparent behavior. "I understand how these places operate." I approached the group, standing just within earshot as Ryan performed his sales routine. "This particular model has a waiting list of 10 months, he was saying, "but I've reserved one for special clients." Mrs. Donovan ran manicured fingers along the leather interior. "It's extraordinary, but I'm not certain about the color." "We could certainly explore custom options," Ryan assured her. "Excuse me," I interjected politely. "I was hoping to inquire about purchasing this model." Ryan's face tightened with barely concealed irritation. "As I mentioned earlier, this vehicle is currently being shown to these customers." Perhaps you could return another time or, as I suggested, explore our pre-owned options. The Donovans shifted uncomfortably, glancing between Ryan and me. I'm specifically interested in this car, I stated calmly. For my sister's birthday next month. Ryan stepped away from the Donovans, lowering his voice to a harsh whisper. Look, I understand people like to dream, but this is a business establishment. That vehicle costs more than most homes. I've been patient, but you're interrupting a legitimate sale. Several nearby customers had paused to observe the uncomfortable exchange. Kevin hovered anxiously nearby, clearly torn between professional obligation and basic human decency. I'm prepared to make a cash purchase today, I said, maintaining my dignity despite the public humiliation burning through me. That was when Ryan's professional facade completely dissolved. He laughed a short, harsh sound that echoed across the showroom floor. Several heads turned our way. A cash purchase? Really? His voice had grown louder, deliberately calibrated to humiliate. This isn't a flea market. We're talking about $350,000. People who can afford these cars don't dress like. He gestured dismissively at my outfit. I've been judged by my appearance before, but rarely with such public cruelty. My cheeks flushed not from embarrassment, but from a slow-building anger. Not for myself, I'd weathered such treatment before. My indignation was for anyone who had ever been judged solely by their appearance, without the privilege of knowing their worth extended beyond what others could see. I believe my money is as good as anyone else's, I said quietly. Ryan stepped closer, towering over me with deliberate intimidation. Let me be clear, he said, no longer bothering to hide his disdain. You are wasting my time and embarrassing yourself. Either make an appointment for a serious discussion dressed appropriately, or please leave the premises. The showroom had fallen silent. The Donovans had stepped away from the car, visibly uncomfortable with the scene unfolding before them. Is there a problem here? A new voice joined the conversation. The dealership's owner, Walter Kingsley, attracted by the commotion. Ryan straightened his tie. No problem, sir. Just explaining to this lady that we operate by appointment for serious buyers. Walter Kingsley assessed the situation quickly, taking in my simple appearance and the watching crowd. His expression made it clear which side he was taking. I see, he said. A mess. Parker, I supplied. Emily Parker. Miss Parker, perhaps there's been a misunderstanding. Our clientele typically, well, they understand the exclusivity of our vehicles. I understand perfectly, I replied, my voice steady despite the humiliation burning in my chest. Your sales director has made your policies quite clear. Ryan stepped forward again, his voice dripping with condescension. If you're genuinely interested, which I doubt, you can call for an appointment. But I'd suggest bringing proof of funds and dressing the part. These cars, he gestured around the showroom, are for a certain class of people. A murmur rippled through the onlookers. Someone snickered. I looked around at the judging faces, at Ryan's smug expression, at the owner's tacit approval of his employees' behavior. I'd faced discrimination before, but rarely so blatantly, so publicly. I see, I said simply. With dignity intact but spirits bruised, I turned and walked toward the exit. Behind me, I heard Ryan's voice, not quite quiet enough. Some people just don't know their place. As I pushed through the glass doors into the morning sunlight, I pulled out my phone. The humiliation stung, but a small, resolute smile formed on my lips as I dialed. Our estate rested on 6 peaceful acres outside Chicago, its understated elegance revealing nothing of the billions behind its ownership. James Parker preferred it that way. At 40, my husband had revolutionized quantum computing security, building a fortune while maintaining a deliberately low profile. When I entered his home office, James looked up from his desk, immediately setting aside his work. 15 years of marriage had taught him to read my expressions with precision. Something was wrong. What happened? He asked, moving around the desk to meet me. I sank into a leather chair, the morning's events washing over me anew. It was educational, I said with a wry smile that didn't reach my eyes. I recounted my experience at the dealership, the condescension, the humiliation, the blatant discrimination. As I spoke, James's expression darkened, but he remained silent, giving me space to process. It's not about me, I concluded. I have the privilege of walking away knowing the truth. But how many people get treated that way every day without the comfort of knowing they actually could afford what they're being denied? James nodded thoughtfully. In our years together, this was what had always moved him most about me, my consistent concern for others, even when I myself had been wronged. So what would you like to do about it? He asked finally. Part of me wants to do nothing, I admitted. Just buy Rebecca's gift elsewhere. But then I think about that young salesman Kevin, who treated me with respect regardless of how I was dressed. And I think about all the people who faced that kind of judgment without having any recourse. I looked directly at James. These people need to understand that worth isn't determined by appearance. But I don't want vengeance. I want awareness. James nodded slowly, a plan forming. I think I might have an idea that accomplishes both. Nothing too dramatic, I warned, knowing my husband's protective instincts. No buying the dealership and firing everyone? James laughed. Nothing so cliché. But maybe I leaned forward. A little education is in order. Together, we crafted a plan not for revenge, but for enlightenment. Something that might change perspectives more effectively than simple retribution. Are you sure you don't want to come along? James asked when we'd finalized the details. I shook my head. This isn't about me needing to witness their comeuppance. It's about them learning to see beyond appearances. I paused, then added with a smile, but I expect a full report. As evening settled over our home, James made several phone calls, setting things in motion for the following morning. Tomorrow would bring a powerful lesson in humility and the danger of assumptions, not just for Ryan Matthews, but for everyone at Prestige Auto Gallery. The following morning arrived with perfect clarity. Ryan Matthews entered Prestige Auto Gallery with a confident stride, adjusting his signature silver tie. Yesterday's incident with the underdressed woman had become an amusing anecdote he'd shared over drinks with colleagues, another delusional dreamer thinking she belonged in the world of luxury. The showroom gleamed under carefully positioned lights, exotic vehicles arranged strategically to maximize their allure. Ryan had just finished the morning staff meeting, emphasizing the importance of qualifying customers properly. Remember, he'd instructed the sales team, our time is valuable. We cater to a specific clientele. It's not elitism, it's efficiency. Kevin, the young salesman, had remained quiet during the meeting, his discomfort evident. Ryan made a mental note to have a word with him about proper customer assessment. At precisely 10:17 a.m., the distinctive purr of an exceptional engine drew attention outside. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, a vehicle unlike any other glided to a stop directly in front of the main entrance. Conversations halted mid-sentence. Even Ryan, typically unimpressed by luxury vehicles given his daily proximity to them, felt his pulse quicken. A Bentley Bacala, but not just any Bacala. This was a custom model with a unique titanium finish that seemed to capture and transform light itself. Conservative estimates would place its value north of $2.5 million. Is that? Walter Kingsley, the owner, had emerged from his office, drawn by the sudden silence. The bespoke Bacala, Ryan confirmed, already moving toward the entrance. Extremely rare configuration. A uniformed chauffeur exited the Bentley and walked around to open the rear passenger door with white-gloved precision. From the vehicle emerged a man of commanding presence, tall, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit that whispered rather than shouted its four-figure price tag. His salt and pepper hair was perfectly groomed, his posture effortlessly authoritative. Ryan's salesman instincts kicked into overdrive. This was beyond a good prospect. This was the kind of client dealerships competed for, the kind whose purchases included not just one vehicle, but potentially an ongoing relationship worth millions. "Good morning, sir." "Welcome to Prestige Auto Gallery," Ryan called out, intercepting the distinguished visitor before any other salesperson could approach. "Ryan Matthews, Sales Director. It's an absolute pleasure to have you with us today." The man regarded Ryan with an unreadable expression, then offered a polite smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "James Parker," he replied simply, offering a firm handshake. Ryan's mind raced. The name sounded vaguely familiar, but he couldn't immediately place it. Regardless, the Bentley spoke volumes about the man's financial status. "Mr. Parker, it's truly an honor. What brings you to our humble establishment today? Perhaps I could show you our newest arrivals? We just received a limited edition." James raised a hand slightly, halting Ryan's practiced pitch. "Actually, I'm here about a specific vehicle. The Velocity Spectre. Emerald green." Ryan's smile broadened. "Excellent choice, sir. One of only 12 produced this year. I'd be delighted to show you. It's actually right over." "I know where it is," James interrupted smoothly. "My wife was here yesterday expressing interest in it." Ryan's customer service smile remained fixed, though confusion flickered in his eyes. "Your wife? I don't recall. Perhaps one of my colleagues assisted her." James's expression cooled noticeably. "No, Mr. Matthews. You assisted her. Or rather, you refused to assist her. Emily Parker. She was wearing jeans and a cream shirt. You suggested she might be more comfortable looking at used cars." The blood drained from Ryan's face as realization dawned. Behind him, he heard a small gasp from Kevin, who had been hovering nearby. "Mr. Parker," Ryan stammered, his usual smooth delivery abandoning him. "There must be some misunderstanding. We welcome all customers here." By now, Walter Kingsley had approached, sensing a situation developing. "Is everything all right, Ryan?" James turned his attention to the owner. "Mr. Kingsley, I presume?" "Walter Kingsley, yes indeed. Welcome to Prestige Auto Gallery." "Thank you. I was just explaining to Mr. Matthews that my wife visited yesterday, interested in purchasing the Spectre as a gift for her sister. She was, however, treated in a manner that I find troubling." Walter's expression shifted rapidly from welcoming to concerned. I'm sorry to hear that. I believe I was briefly involved in a conversation, but I wasn't aware of all the details." James nodded thoughtfully. "The details include your sales director here suggesting that people like her don't belong in an establishment like this, based solely on her casual attire." By now, a small crowd had gathered other salespeople, support staff, and even a few early customers. The showroom had gone completely silent. "Mr. Parker," Ryan began, desperation creeping into his voice, "if there was any misunderstanding." "It wasn't a misunderstanding," Kevin suddenly spoke up. All eyes turned to the young salesman, who looked surprised at his own courage. "Ms. Parker was treated poorly. She was polite and specific about her interest in the Spectre, and she was dismissed repeatedly based on her appearance." Ryan shot Kevin a withering look, but the damage was done. James turned back to Walter Kingsley. "You know, it's interesting. My wife founded and runs the Parker Institute for Children with Special Needs. It's been her life's work since before I met her. She's raised over $70 million for specialized medical equipment and educational programs." He paused, letting this sink in. "Emily chooses to dress simply because she believes in living modestly despite our means. She finds it keeps her connected to the families she helps. It's one of the countless reasons I love her." Walter Kingsley had gone pale. "Mr. Parker, I assure you this does not reflect the values of our dealership. We pride ourselves on." "Actions speak louder than mission statements, Mr. Kingsley," James interrupted firmly. "Now, regarding the Spectre. I'm not here to purchase just one vehicle. Ryan perked up slightly at this, a glimmer of professional hope breaking through his distress. I was planning to purchase the Spectre for my wife's sister, as Emily intended. But I was also considering a fleet replacement for our corporate vehicles, 8 in total. And my personal collection could use updating as well. Kingsley's eyes widened. A sale of that magnitude would make their quarterly targets in a single transaction. However, James continued, I find myself questioning whether this is the right establishment for such a significant investment. The silence in the showroom was absolute. Ryan looked physically ill. Mr. Parker, Walter began desperately, I cannot apologize enough for this unfortunate incident. I assure you this is not how we conduct business. Please allow us to make this right. James considered this for a moment. Perhaps there is a way forward, he said finally. But it would require more than just selling me cars. Anything, Walter assured him quickly. The Parker Institute is hosting a benefit gala next month. We're raising funds for a new adaptive technology center for children with developmental challenges. James turned to the mortified sales director. Ryan, I think your presence would be educational. Ryan swallowed hard. Sir? Not as a guest, James clarified. As a volunteer. The Institute is always looking for people to help with setup, to assist the children, to see firsthand the work being done. The implications were clear. This wasn't just about selling cars anymore. It was about learning a fundamental lesson in human value. Additionally, James continued, addressing Walter Kingsley, the dealership might consider implementing a training program on unconscious bias. I know several excellent consultants. Walter nodded emphatically. Absolutely. We would welcome such an initiative. As for the vehicles, James turned to Kevin, the young salesman who had spoken up. I'd like you to handle all the paperwork, starting with the Spectre for my sister-in-law. Kevin's eyes widened. Me? Thank you, sir. I'd be honored. Good, James said with finality. Now, shall we discuss the specifics of the corporate fleet? As they moved toward Kingsley's office, James paused in front of the Spectre, running his hand along its sleek contour. My wife has excellent taste, doesn't she? Behind them, Ryan Matthews stood motionless, his perfect world fundamentally altered. The harsh truth had finally dawned on him. He had revealed his character not by how he treated those he thought important, but by how he treated those he believed were not. 1 month later, the Parker Institute Benefit Gala transformed the Grand Chicago Millennium Hotel into a celebration of possibility. Children with various disabilities and their families mingled with donors, medical professionals, and supporters. Near the entrance, Ryan Matthews, dressed not in his usual designer attire, but in the event staff uniform, directed guests and assisted a young girl in a wheelchair. The past month had changed him profoundly. His volunteer work at the Institute had started as an obligation, the price of professional survival, but something unexpected had happened as he witnessed the challenges these children faced daily and the dignity with which they met them. Across the room, I approached him, elegant in a simple teal dress. Despite knowing who I was now, Ryan was struck again by my lack of pretension. How are you finding the experience, Ryan? I asked. He considered the question seriously. Humbling, he finally answered. And necessary. I nodded. Sophia seems to have taken a liking to you, I observed, referring to the girl in the wheelchair. She's teaching me about adaptive painting, Ryan admitted with a genuine smile. Apparently, my brush technique needs considerable work. This drew a laugh from me. Ryan's expression grew serious. Mrs. Parker, I know I've apologized formally, but I need to say it directly. I'm truly sorry for how I treated you. There's no excuse. You're right, there isn't, I agreed, but without malice. The question is, what have you learned? That worth isn't determined by appearance, position, or possessions, he said thoughtfully. And that everyone deserves respect until they prove otherwise, not the other way around. Good lessons, I acknowledged. Expensive ones, too, I imagine. Ryan added ruefully, thinking of the substantial business the dealership had lost when James had decided to purchase only the Spectre and not the additional fleet. Worth every penny, he replied sincerely. Across the room, James joined us, placing a gentle hand on my shoulder. Ryan was just sharing some of his insights, I explained. James nodded. I hear you've become quite involved with the adaptive arts program? Yes, sir. In fact, I've signed up to continue volunteering after my required period. Ryan hesitated, then added, and I've been working with Mr. Kingsley on revamping our customer approach at the dealership. No more qualifying by appearance. I'm glad to hear it, James said, then surprised Ryan by adding, which reminds me that corporate fleet I mentioned. We're still in the market. Perhaps you could handle that transaction? Kevin speaks highly of how you've been mentoring him. Ryan's expression registered shock before settling into genuine gratitude. I would be honored, Mr. Parker. Truly honored. Later that evening, as the event wound down, Ryan watched James and me working the room, not flaunting our wealth or influence, but connecting genuinely with each child and family. He reflected on how completely his perception had been transformed. A month ago, he would have dismissed someone like me based on casual appearance. Now he understood that true value ran deeper than designer labels, luxury cars, or executive titles. As Ryan helped Sophia back into her wheelchair after a painting session, the girl grinned up at him. You know what, Mr. Ryan? You're pretty cool for a grown-up. Ryan smiled. Coming from you, Sophia, that's the highest compliment I've received in a very long time. And he meant it. We all make judgments based on appearances. But as Ryan Matthews discovered, looking beyond the surface can reveal extraordinary people and life-changing opportunities. The true measure of wealth has nothing to do with your bank account. It's about how you treat others when you think no one important is watching.